Hello everyone, this is Dr. Jagannayaki, Associate Professor in MBA Department, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Dundigal. Today I am going to give a lecture on research process. So in general, everyone they want to do some sort of research. So in that process, they need to understand what are the different types of steps available in research, how a particular person he is to carry out research in different ways. So it involves various processes right from the beginning, starting with formulation of research problem. See, unless until if a person he do not understand what is the root cause of the problem, he never find out any sort of solution to that problem. So research process, the first step is problem identification. So based on the problem identification, we need to collect different types of information from various sources, and that data should be organized in a proper manner, then analyzed by using appropriate scientific methods, and based on that, the investigator or researcher he used to develop a report, and that report he is going to submit to the decision makers. Basing on that, the people who will be in a position to make effective decisions in the organization, they will act accordingly. So what is this research process, how it is useful to the student? The course objective is that the student, just by understanding the objective, like develop understanding the basic framework, see how we used to carry out a particular process and how it is useful to the business people so that they can make decisions effectively in the organization. So after completion of this particular topic, the learner will be able to formulate the research problem, hypothesis testing, and how to analyze data by using suitable statistical tools. So this is the course outcome after learning this research process. Now, if you see this diagram, it is a complete picture of research process which is in the form of a flowchart. So the first and foremost step is problem formulation or problem identification. See, first of all, we should in a position to define the problem thoroughly. The problem statement, unless until you cannot understand, then it is not possible to find out a solution to the problem. This is first step. The second step is that review the literature. See, if you want to analyze the problem, we need to collect some information, and that data it will be in two types. One is conceptual literature, another one is empirical literature. See, conceptual literature is related to the research concepts and theories which suits the given problem under study. Whereas coming to empirical literature, it involves some previous studies. So many people already they might have done researches in the specific area. So what they said and how they analyze the data, is there anything relevant to the present topic, or else basing on those data they use like a reference, and basing on that people they used to carry out the research by collecting the various review list literature. And next step is formulate hypothesis. See, for every research there should be some basis, and that basis is known as assumption. So without having this preposition, we cannot improve the study further. So there will be two types of hypothesis. One is null hypothesis, another one is alternative hypothesis or research hypothesis. See, null hypothesis means we'll start the study like there is no association, because you are going to test the hypothesis, because you are going to find out is there any significant association or relationship, that what type of variables you are going to consider under the study. So for that reason, we need to develop hypothesis. If one hypothesis like null hypothesis proves wrong, there will be something else that should be the right statement. So that assumption is known as alternative hypothesis. So both hypotheses we need to formulate under this step. Then after formulating the hypothesis, then we have to develop research design. See, research design is that it is like planning of research, how to carry out. So how we are going to formulate the problem, and how you are going to specify the objectives. Again, when you are talking about the objectives, objectives means purpose. What is the purpose of your study? So objectives are based on the nature of the problem under research. What type of problem you are going to deal with? Basing on that, we need to formulate objectives. So there will be two types of objective. One is general objective, another one is tested objective. So there are general objective means when you are going to conclude something as generalized statement. So it is like very nominal and normal. It should be whatever statement you are going to do. But when you are talking about specific or tested hypothesis and that required some sort of testing, and it is based on the hypothesis what we have formulated. From that we used to formulate the objectives, and those objectives, whether what type of study it is, whether it is exploratory or descriptive or explanatory, or you are going to carry out a diagnostic research, and what type it is. So basing on that, we used to choose appropriate samples. Why we are talking about the samples and all means, when you are taking all the elements or all the people in a particular locality, for example, if you have more than 1 lakh or 2 lakh people they are residing in a particular locality, it is not possible to cover each and every person because it involves a lot of time and it is highly expensive. For example, census survey you take. In case of census survey, they used to conduct survey who resides in a particular country. So all people's data they used to collect. So to avoid such type of things, generally the researcher will do, he used to select a small part from the whole universe. So that is known as complete enumeration or population. Then the sample is that it is a small part of entire universe, and drawing a particular sample, it involves different types of procedures. In general, there will be two types of methods. One is random sampling technique, another one is non-random sampling technique. See, random sampling technique, there are different methods unknowingly, just like that we used to pick up some type of elements or some people without following any proper criteria. So that is known as random sampling technique. For example, if you take lottery method, so what we used to do generally, if you want to pick a particular person's name, we'll write all the names of the people in a box, we'll shuffle thoroughly, and from that we used to pick some of the chits. So that's how we used to select the random samples. Coming to non-random sampling techniques, we used to follow a systematic procedure in the selection of a sample from the universe. Sometimes we are going to divide into stratas. Sometimes we'll go with cluster sampling, sometimes area wise. Sometimes we used to allot some sort of quotas, basing on that we used to select. So the sample design, it involves different types. Again, it is based on the nature of the study. Then after selecting the samples, then we used to start data collection, which is known as execution of data. How we are going to execute the data. So here we'll discuss about two types of methods, primary and secondary data sources. So when you are talking about primary data sources, whenever you are going to collect the data directly from the enumerates for the first time, and that type of information is known as primary data. So there are different ways to collect primary data. One can adopt observation method. Some people will go with interview method. Again, in interviews, we have different types of methods. Personal interviews, right? Then telephonic interviews, and sometimes we also approach survey method where we used to develop a structured questionnaires, and that should be sent through mails. There are different ways to collect primary data. Coming to secondary data sources, see this is already existed or available information like from the schedules, company websites, interacting with the people, whatever I told you previously in case of related review of literature. It is either you may take from the conceptual literature or else empirical literature sources. So all these things comes under secondary data sources. The next step after collecting data by using different sources, that data it should be analyzed. So before going to analyze the data, the investigator what he used to do, he used to segregate what is relevant and what is irrelevant. See, he will consider only relevant data which is useful for the study, and that data should be analyzed where we used to include the tested hypothesis by using different methods, parametric and non-parametric methods. Whether you are going to study quality or else you are going to study some quantitative parameters. So basing on that, we will use different types of methods. See, it depends on the sample size also. If the sample size is less than or equal to 30, we are going to use t-test. If the sample size is more than 30, then we are going to apply z-test. Sometimes if you want to find the variances of the data, there we used to apply f-test, ANOVA. In terms of qualitative aspect, if you want to measure something, attributes, then we are going to apply chi-square test, sometimes correlation, regression, and sometimes we also use time series analysis. So it depends how you are going to analyze the data and what type of data you are required to resolve the problem. Then next, after using some appropriate statistical tools, because you are going to test the hypothesis, right? So that hypothesis we need to interpret, and finally there will be two decisions: either we have to accept or reject the null hypothesis. Basing on that, we'll draw the statistical inferences, and then finally we used to submit a report with overall conclusion. So in this process, we also include some logical analysis like inductive reasoning, deductive reasoning. All these things we are going to include in the research process. So this is a brief description about this flowchart. Now, what are the key points after analyzing this particular diagram? The student can able to understand how to formulate the research problems. See, this is the first thing, research problem. So, what do you mean by research problem? Problem is simply we can define that some difficulty. See, if you are unable to resolve the things, it depends on the situation, what type of experience the researcher is going to gain out of some theoretical problems, or it may be sometimes practicals also. It leads to some difficulty to solve a particular issue in the organization. So the researcher always he want to find some solution. So for that reason, if you have to understand the problem thoroughly, then only he can able to proceed further. Coming to the research problem, there are two types of research problems. One is like which is related to the circumstances or conditions, you can say, which is known as state of nature, whereas others we try to establish some sort of relationship between variables. So in simple terms, if you want to say, the formulation is like that. We used to start the data from a general topic into a specific research problem. So that is the reason, first of all, we need to identify the root cause of the problem. So if you are going to, for example, if there is a problem in production department, so due to non-availability of raw materials or due to lack of skilled labor, sometimes the efficiency, it automatically it will come down. So in that case, again, the people who are maybe concerned to that particular wing, he has to understand the problem. Why is it alone the problem or else any other problems? See, these are all interrelated with each other. There is a link between all the functional departments. So you doesn't blame only overall there is a problem in the production, but production department is something they are facing some sort of problems. because they used to have some sort of cooperation from other departments as well, right? So thus it constitutes the first step in a scientific inquiry. So whenever you're going with a scientific inquiry, first of all you should formulate the problem. We can able to analyze the problem. We can able to identify the cause for the problem. So here it involves two steps in the formulation of research problem. The first one is understanding the problem thoroughly. See, not based on some vague answers sometimes you may get, but exactly you have to peep into the problem thoroughly, then restate the problem into meaningful terms of analytical point of view. So we used to collect the data related to the problem from various sources, and that sources, whatever data we have collected, it should be analyzed thoroughly. Then only we used to move to the next step in the research process. So in case of the research problem, it will have some components. These components are known as factors what we are exactly going to consider in analyzing a research problem, in the formulation of a research problem. See, the first one is that there must be an individual or group, because sometimes an individual person may face some difficulty, some people as a group. So we cannot violate these two members. So we have to analyze the problem thoroughly, either it is related to an individual person or else a group of people who are working in the organization. Then after that, there must be some objectives to be attained. What do you mean by objective? Objective means the purpose why you are doing this particular study, why you want to find out solution. What happens if you are not going to understand the problem thoroughly? Instead of one problem, there may be multiple problems may arise in the organization. So if one wants nothing, one cannot have a problem. See, no person in this world have an all problem solution. So for that reason, generally out of curiosity, people they want to know different things and different ways to find out various solution. Then next one is there must be alternative means or the courses of action. For every problem there will be multiple solution. So for example, whenever you are going to buy something, if you visit any supermarket or anything, there will be multiple choices. So out of that we are going to select the one which you feel is the best one. So in the same way, even in case of research also, we used to seek for the best solution. What is the optimum solution? Optimum means there is no further substitution for that solution. So that is the reason we used to analyze each and every alternative course of action, and whichever is feasible to the investigator, and he will consider that is the best from the available alternatives, so that he can able to attain whatever stated objectives. He can able to solve the problem very easily. Then there must be some doubts in the mind of researcher. So this doubt is related to the selection of alternatives, because what happens generally we feel sometimes regret after implementation of a particular decision. So when you are going to select out of various alternatives, that time we feel that that will be the best solution. But due to uncertainty, there are so many other factors. Due to that, it may sometimes make the person to feel regret. So the researcher will have so many doubts, whatever alternative course of action selected by him, whether it is effective or not. So it must answer the question concerning the relative efficiency of possible alternatives. So if anyone asks you why you have taken this decision, so immediately we can able to say the answer. As we are going to use the scientific methods, we have ready-made evidence with us, like how people they used to clarify their doubts related to various questions or various issues. Then there must be some environments to which the difficulty pertains. See, the environment means the state of nature, the conditions where you are working, As our subject is related to business, so in business there will be different types of environment, whether the problem is with internal or external. If it is internal, internal means within the organization, how you are going to resolve the problem. If it is external, so from outside forces, if you have any problems like related to political issues, some economical policies, even industrial policies, sometimes they cause some sort of disturbance in the business. So that should be clearly understand, and accordingly we used to analyze the data, and we have to come out a solution to the existing problem. Then how we are going to select the problem? See, there are different ways to select. So whenever you are going to select the subject, it should not be, some cases we'll consider general topic. In some cases, we used to consider specific topics or specific area. So subject should not be normally chosen. So you are doing research, it doesn't mean just like that you are picking any topic and you want to work on that. But it will be a difficult task to do any new light in such a case. Already so many people they have done research in that area. So apart from that, what else you are going to show in your study, and how you want to prove yourself unique than others. So just simply you cannot select the subject for the research. Then the subject whatever you are going to select, it should not be like controversial. So we should not give any chance to outsiders so that they criticize your subject, whatever topic you have taken. The choice of an average research, when there is controversial subject, then it is becomes very difficult to continue his research further, right? Then too narrow and too vague problems should be avoided. So whenever you are going to formulate a problem statement, it should not be like too narrow, or sometimes it should not be too broad. So we'll see that the statement should be short and simple. We can precise the statement, and it should be defined clearly, so that whoever look into your research, they can able to understand what is your objective, what exactly you are going to do with the study, so what is your outcome. So everything they will have a clear picture just by looking into your problem statement. Then the subject selected for research should be familiar and feasible. See, most of the cases people they will select this topics like depends on others' choices. Then we should understand up to what extent you know the subject. Whether is it possible to do the research in that area, whatever topic you have chosen. So all these things we should consider. Then whether is there availability of data, and even we can able to spare more time, and do you have sufficient enough, because research is very costly process, it involves lot of money. So all these things we should consider before going to do any research. Then the importance of the subject, the qualifications, training of the researcher, the cost involved, time factor, all these also consider while selecting the research problem, right? The next one is the selection of a problem must be preceded by preliminary study. See, preliminary study means just we want to know the feasibility, up to what extent you are going to justify whatever topic you have selected for the study. So for that, it's like a rehearsal for the main study. So that study is known as pilot study. So every person, they have to conduct a pilot study, and basing on the result of whatever he is going to obtain as outcome, then he has to select a particular subject. Then why we have to define the research problem? What happens if you are not going to define the problem? See, in general, there is a proverb, a proper definition of research problem will enable the researcher to be on the right track. So as we know, a problem clearly stated is a problem solved. So if you can able to define the problem, then almost we have completed half of the solution, right? So for that reason, we need to define the research problem, so that it guides the researcher how to be on a right track. If it is an ill-defined problem, there is no clarity, lot of ambiguity is there, then it creates a lot of problems to the researcher. Then, what are the techniques that generally involved in defining a problem? So, the first one is like statement of the problem. So, whatever statement you are going to give, this is the problem statement. For example, if you want to find out like the performance of the students, then under my study, I used to define that to understand up to what extent the students they are going to perform well in their exams. So, I'm going to conduct some sort of survey whether really they are efficient enough to pass the subjects, or else is there any barriers or constraints available with the student. So all these things I can able to define in a proper manner. So everything it should go like a general way. Then understanding the nature of the problem. See whether it is concerned with qualitative research or else quantitative, whether it is exploratory, you want to explore a new facts, or else you want to diagnose something. So it depends. So that is comes under understanding the nature of the problem, what type of study it is. So accordingly, we need to select the problem also. We have to define the problem. Formulation of the problem is defined by the nature of study. The next one is surveying the available literature. Whether do we have like data, whatever you are going to do as research, whether you can able to get the subject related aspect or not, all these things also we should see while defining a problem. And developing the ideas through discussions. So sometimes we need to discuss with our colleagues, friends, subject experts from various universities and some other people out of the academics, so that they will give whenever we are discussing with a number of people. So we used to find out different ideas. So instead of focusing only one aspect, we can focus on multiple aspects. So all these things when you are going to share with other people, we can able to analyze and develop a better idea than a single person's opinion. The next one is rephrasing the research problem into a working proposition. So, whatever ideas you have got from different discussions from various people, various sources, from that we'll select the one and that we are going to restate the research problem into a working proposition. Then the second step in research process is extensive literature survey. So once we formulated the problem, then we need to have a brief summary should be written down. So that is known as extensive literature survey. So it tells us what type of sources available to us to acquaint the selected problem. So what the researcher will do, he should undertake the extensive literature survey which is connected with the specific problem. Okay, so this extensive literature survey, it is connected with two ways. One is conceptual literature, another one is empirical literature. Coming to the conceptual literature, it involves some of the concepts and theories related to the specific subject. And empirical literature is that, see, it is already done by somebody else. So it is like ready-made information. So just by abstracting in the indexing journals and published data from the various companies' websites, RBI bulletins. So many things, sources available. Basing on that, we used to collect some information that is relevant to the present study. And academic journals also we used to consider, conference proceedings, government reports, everything. So all these sources we will utilize as literature, and that is useful to find solution to the existing problem. Then third step is development of working hypothesis. So how we have to develop or formulate a hypothesis. So after this literature survey, the next step, hypothesis formulation. So the researcher should state in a clear terms the working hypothesis or hypothesis. See, working hypothesis or hypothesis, it is a tentative assumption. It is a proposition, right? So, basing on this assumption, we used to draw and we used to test the logical or empirical consequences by defining null and alternative hypothesis. So, whatever assumption you are going to state, that should be very specific and limited to the research topic. So, whatever research topic you are going to study, and the topic is like the nature of the problem, and basing on that, we need to develop a assumption, and that assumption it should be specific and limited so that we can easily test that hypothesis. Then how does one go about developing working hypothesis? So how we used to formulate. So again, like in case of review of literature, whenever you're going to develop a problem statement, so how we used to collect the ideas from various sources. In a similar manner, here also we used to make discussions with colleagues and experts, and also based on various data like various sources records that are available. If you want to analyze the past trend, that also we used to consider, and some difficulties or peculiarities we used to observe in our day-to-day life related to the specific topic. So everything we used to consider under this, and those studies we used to review and exploratory personal investigation. So whatever problem you are going to study, and basing on that you are going to develop the hypothesis, then we used to see that up to what extent we can able to find a practical solution. Practical in the sense it is like how to solve the real life problems. So all these things we used to consider just by making a small statement, and that statement is known as hypothesis, and that has to be tested by using various scientific methods. Then next step is preparing the research design. See, research design is that it is a plan. Why we have to plan? So for a small thing, for example, if you want to go outside with your family, then we'll start planning the things. So why? Because it will make easy to adapt a proper procedure, what to do, right? We can able to plan how much cost involves in that, and how much time it incurs. So everything we used to consider with a proper planning. Even in case of research, it is not a small task, right? So it is very difficult, so that we have to plan well in advance, right from the beginning, from the first step, like that is problem statement. Basing on that, the next, what is next step, like we have to think about how to collect the various literature sources. Everything we need a plan, because it helps to provide relevant evidence with minimal expenditure. So we should not invest more funds. At the same time is very valuable factor for everyone. So all these things we used to consider. With that reason, we have to prepare a research design. So the purposes may be grouped into four categories. The first one is like exploration. So what do you mean by exploration? So if you are trying to analyze a problem, there will be alternative courses of action. There will be so many alternatives for the problem, right? So when you are peeping into the problem, in depth analysis you are going to do, we used to find out different types of aspects. We can get different information apart from the originality, right? So all these things we can able to explore. So the basic problem starts with production department, but it ends with some sales or some other department. So how these departments they are connected with each other, right? So we used to explore different types of issues and different types of data. We used to find out difficulties also there to resolve the particular problem. The next one is we used to describe. So sometimes we have to describe a particular situation, a particular circumstances, what is the reason for this. So it is not basically from the production department, but the problem is with sales department. If you ask the sales department, they will say some other reasons, right? So all these things we used to describe in a most efficient manner, because handling the situation is very, very difficult to any person. So accurate description of a situation, or sometimes it is like association between the variables, whatever we are going to use in the research study. The next one is diagnosis. Then here we used to find what is the cause and effect relationship. So when you are going to study two different variables, how these variables they are related to each other, what is the independent variable and what is the dependent variable. So all these things we used to now find out effectively, and for that, whatever research you are going to conduct, that is known as diagnosis research. And sometimes we need to conduct experiments. For example, to know the productivity, improvement in productivity. For example, what the farmer will do, if he will divide the total farm into different parts, and he used to harvest different seeds to understand how he can able to improve productivity. So if we are using different seeds in different lands, the fertility also it may vary from one type of farm to another one. So all these things like come we are what we are doing exactly, we are conducting some sort of experiment, right? So there are several research designs. So basically we used to divide the research designs into two types. One is experimental research design, another one is non-experimental research design. So experimental research design, it can be further divided into two ways, formal and informal experimental designs. So coming to informal experimental designs, we have different methods like before and after without control. So before, what will be the fertility, and after, how it will be. So all these things we used to compare. Then after only with control. Then next one is before and after with control. So there are different types of research designs that comes under the category of experimental research designs. Then coming to experimental formal research designs, again there are different types. CRD, completely randomized design. Then RBD means randomized block design. LSD, Latin square design, and simple complex factorial designs. There are different types of research designs available. So it depends on the researcher, and that is related to his type of study. Basing on that, he will choose any one research design whichever is applicable to the present study. Then the preparation of research design, it involves some points. The first one is like means of obtaining information, whether you are going with formal or informal experimental design, whatever may be the type of research design. Then we used to see that what type of data we can able to collect, and what are the sources, how you are going to collect the data related to the specific problem. So that also we need to see. And then availability and skills of the researcher and his staff. So even both they should be familiar with the specific topic whatever they have chosen for the research, whether the researcher will have the capability or skills to analyze the problem, to find out the various solutions or not. So that is also important. Then explanation of the way in which whatever they are going to select as the means of obtaining information. So it should be like we need to arrange the data properly, organization of data. Then there should be some logical relationship between the variables whatever you have chosen for the study. So that's how we used to select the problem, and we used to select the appropriate research design. Then the time available for research. So how much time is necessary to carry out the research. So that is also we need to specify the research design. The next, the cost factor, because without paying any single pie, you cannot get the fruitful results. Either it may be a research or it may be anything. If you want to solve the purpose, then we need to spend a lot of money in that. So cost is another factor. So to carry out a research, the researcher also see that whether he is sufficient enough to carry out the research by way of finance. So all these things we used to consider under research process. So the key points at the end of the particular topic, once again the outcome is that the learner will able to understand the various steps involved, how to carry out the research process and how to collect the data and how to analyze the data and how to draw the samples, everything they can able to understand with this research process. So I have taken the references like research methodology by C.R. Kothari. Another one is business research methods by Jigman. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.